Chapter 482. Now this soul seedling was gone. Bai Shi's status was special, and similarly, she did not participate in the struggle for the throne. Bai Shu was a wily old fox. As long as he made his presence known at the right time, the position of one of the four elders would inevitably have a seat for him. He could be considered as having a son at an old age. Although he still had a few years old daughter at home, he was still busy making babies, hoping to give birth to a son. His son was not yet 20 years old, so he did not need to be like his father, retiring early. He only needed to steadily and surely pave his son's path. When the day came when he could no longer move, it would be almost there. As a result, Bai Shu's married daughters were more than 10, but not a single one was directly related to the princes. However, if one were to carefully line them up and calculate, they would find that except for Jin Wang, they were basically related to everyone. Under such circumstances, if this precious piece of meat died, it was equivalent to all their efforts being in vain, all their plans coming to naught. Even the best person would go crazy. Therefore, the Bai family did not care how the person died. They only knew that after the person died, they would do everything to get justice. Not counting Bai Shu, Lu Qingdi's cousin, Lu Qingdi's eldest uncle, was still alive. Although he was old, he basically did not move at home. His only grandson was gone. It was estimated that even if he had to crawl, he would crawl into the palace to cry to Lu Qingdi. What would Lu Qingdi do? Take it lightly? It would only be a thunderous rage. Jingwen also thought that the person who schemed against them was really clumsy. Looking at it now, it was clearly very brilliant. No matter what the method was, as long as the person was killed and died in Jin Wang's manner, that was a good method. Not to mention that so many people saw Bai Gongzi pounce to court death. As long as there was no solid evidence to prove that someone was secretly plotting behind, the Bai family would bite Jin Wang to death. For example, if there was no horse racing, his grandson would not go to the manor. If Jin Wang's people did not guard well, his grandson would not have died. If Jin Wang did not raise a tiger, his grandson would not have died. In short, there were many reasons. Although Lu Qingdi would not go so far as to take his son's life, and Jin Wang appeared to be very idle on the surface, even if he was fined his salary and grounded, it would not be a big deal. It would certainly not satisfy the Bai family. What was most likely was that they would use all of their friendship with Lu Qingdi to strip Jin Wang of his title and demote him to a common person. For a commoner to become the emperor, unless Lu Cheng Emperor's other sons were all dead, otherwise, it would be more legitimate than a baby prince. Although Jin Wang couldn't ascend the throne normally, but he couldn't kill all his brothers after usurping the throne, right? From Emperor Lu Qingdi's point of view, the sixth son could not inherit the throne anyway. Therefore, it did not matter whether the sixth son's status was higher or lower. With his protection, even if the sixth son was a commoner, he could continue to do whatever he wanted. As for what would happen after 100 years, he would leave an imperial edict early to restore the title of nobility to the son who inherited the throne. In this way, the other sons would not have to worry about passing the throne to the sixth son. This was simply killing two birds with one stone. And in Emperor Lu Qingdi's heart, it could be said that he would be complacent to solve the problem and protect his son well. Therefore, if there was no strong evidence to catch the real culprit, things would probably develop as planned. However, thinking about it, since they had laid out such a trap, naturally it would not be easy to get hold of the evidence. Jingwan rubbed her eyebrows. How should she break this trap? Have all the people at the scene been detained for interrogation? Wang Fei, rest assured, they have been guarded and carefully questioned. They will not let go of any clues. Imperial bodyguard Qian said. Speaking of which, they were also angry. Things were under control, but in the end, such a problem occurred. It was simply a disgrace to them. After all, the other party was just a pampered young master who did not have much strength. They were well trained, and the guards guarding the periphery were also rice buckets. They were concentrating on dealing with the tiger and did not notice. Could it be that the people outside also could not watch one person? So easily let people run in? Or did they deliberately let them in? You've been working for His Highness for a long time. I believe in your ability to do things. Jingwan paused. If there is something suspicious and the other party is not willing to let go, directly ask Gong Jiu to do it. Just don't kill anyone. Imperial bodyguard Qian looked at Jingwan with some surprise and quickly lowered his head. Looking at some dark things, the Wang Fei also knew, and according to her temperament, she was ruthless. It seemed that she was really angry. In addition, temporarily seal the manor. Without permission, no one is allowed to go out. Also, inform the Bai family. Yes, go and ask the prince to come. If it did not involve the Bai family, naturally it would be done. It was fine even without someone. Yes. Jingwan's eyes fell on the mat. Wait, has Gong Jiu seen the body? Reply to Wang Fei. He has not. There are too many people. Even if Master Bai's servants were interrogated, they were not willing to go too far away. They insisted that Master Bai's body was under their eyes. They were very emotional and made a lot of noise. If they touch Master Bai's body, I am afraid that the Bai family will not let it go. Jingwan's eyes swept the periphery and quickly found the target. Although she did not know what they were talking about, she could faintly hear crying. Because the tiger had hurt people before, Jingwan thought that the crying was related to those people. But thinking about it, it was impossible for the injured body to stay here. It must be sent to another place to heal. Thinking about it carefully, these servants of the Bai family were also very strange. They should know their master's position in the Bai family. If their master died, they would definitely not have a good ending. If they had better endurance, they would be trembling in fear and almost fainting. But now, they still had the mind to think about other things. They were crying and wailing to guard their master's body to prevent others from touching it. This was not normal. Let Gong Jiu do it. Interrogate these people first. Since they've already been frightened, it's reasonable for them to be a little more miserable. Then, send someone trustworthy to watch over young Master Bai's body. Don't let anyone get close. Evacuate all unrelated people. Let Gong Jiu take a look at the body as soon as possible. Before the Bai family arrives, we have to finish everything. Also, find 2 experienced coroners to do the autopsy in front of the Bai family. No one would rush into the mouth of Tiger for no reason. If he was not drugged, he must have been caught with something that could affect his mind. This Master Bai was the only son of the Bai family. He was the kind that was endlessly spoiled. However, among the rich playboys in the capital, he was the kind that kept a low profile and did not cause any trouble. Master Bai and his father were very smart. Although they spoiled him, they knew how to control it well. Therefore, Master Bai's reputation was really not well known. So, it was almost impossible for him to be caught with something that could be used against him. Even if there was, he would definitely tell his family. In order to protect this only son of the Bai family, the 2 elders of the Bai family would definitely try to cover up the matter. Therefore, the possibility of him being drugged was more than 90%. Yes. Jingwan glanced at him. You should have thought about it. I am overthinking. If I say so much, it will delay the time. Do it as soon as possible. Princess, you are very thoughtful. We are not as good as you. That's enough. Don't flatter me. I know how much weight I'm worth. Do it as soon as possible. Yes. It seemed that the flattery failed. Well, when it came to pleasing the princess, he was not as good as Muin, the henchman who was used to flattering. Jingwan found a place to sit down. She did not want to disturb them. The maid served Jingwan a cup of tea. Jingwan occasionally took a sip. Most of the time, she held the teacup and pondered. It was not good to be too idle. This matter either did not come or was extremely tricky. When Li Honyuan came over, he saw Jingwan quietly pondering. He waved to the maid who greeted him. When Jingwan looked up, his fingertips fell on her face. They looked at each other for a moment. Li Honyuan said, "Don't worry. It's okay. I think you already know who died. I am worried that in the future." Li Honyuan pressed his fingertips on Jingwan's lips. "Wan, why do you think that this matter will go according to someone's plan? Do you think you can find the real murderer?" The corners of Li Hongyuan's mouth curled up. What's the point of investigating the real culprit? There's no need to investigate. Just put on a show. If we investigate too thoroughly, wouldn't we be exposing our strength to outsiders? Even if it's just a drop in the ocean, wouldn't it make people more afraid? Although a fly is nothing to be afraid of, it will be very annoying if there are too many of them. Instead of spending time dealing with those trivial matters, I'm naturally more willing to spend time with Wanwan. Jingwan slapped his hand away. I'm serious. I'm not joking with Wanwan. When I first came here, I have already ordered that there is no need to use special means to interrogate. Just ask the normal questions. Gong Jiao doesn't need to look at the body. When the coroner and the Bai family arrive, they can directly conduct an autopsy. The coroner will say whatever the result is. Anyway, according to what you said, it is very difficult to find the real murderer. Some people can't be touched without evidence. It's just a suspicion. So, there is no need to waste time. Jingwan looked at him. Was he not joking? Are you going to take a step back in order to advance? Are you really going to be a commoner? A commoner? One is really thinking too much. If I become a commoner, won't one be wronged? My position will only be high, not low. I will not be low. Retreating in order to advance was something that could be done, but it was impossible to make him retreat so much. In this matter, there was no need for him to do so. So, a Yuan already has a countermeasure. Can you tell me what you're going to do? Wouldn't it be more interesting to have a reversal at the end of the matter? The problem is, according to what you said, I already know the final outcome. So, I'm not interested in the reversal process. If you put it that way, well, it's probably taking drastic measures. What about the specifics? These words were equivalent to not saying anything. Li Hongyuan laughed again. Wanwan is so smart. You can make a guess yourself. Jingwan's face was a little dark. Why was he still joking with her at this time? However, the so-called taking drastic measures probably meant that he had something on the Bai family. It was a very fatal kind. If he revealed it to Lu Qingdi, even if Empress Dowager Bai was his friend, Lu Qingdi would never help the Bai family. He would even kill the Bai family. Seeing Jingwan's anger, Li Hongyuan finally stopped teasing her. He sat next to her and whispered in her ear. Jingwan opened her eyes wide in surprise. The so-called taking drastic measures was completely different from what she thought. Are you sure this is true? You're not going to do this? Of course it's true. If it's false, maybe I will do the same. Jingwan looked at him with a strange expression. Prince knows a lot about the things in the capital. It was time to publish gossip magazines. There must be some special news. What can this prove? Li Hanyuan did not take it seriously. As a person of two lives, it was normal to know more than others. It shows that a Yuan has trained well, and his subordinates are all capable people. Otherwise, how can you be omniscient? Li Hanyuan cast a sidelong glance at her. Wan, are you trying to plead for them in a roundabout way? With this, Jingwan reacted. No matter what, today's matter, whether it was the guards of Jin Wangfu or the people who looked after the tigers in the precious beast garden, other than participating, the rest could be regarded as dereliction of duty. They must be punished. It was just a matter of light or heavy. I only hope that after the matter is clear, Prince can be lenient with the irrelevant people. Didn't I let someone pass on a message to you before? This matter will be handed over to you. How to deal with it? You have the final say. If it involved the Bai family, how could she deal with it? All right, she could deal with the people in the Wangfu. The real culprit could be casually investigated. But the people inside, who was the traitor, it must be clear. No matter what the reason was, they must be severely punished. Jingwan firmly believed that they would be able to find out the truth. What's next? What should we do? I have already let people temporarily seal the farmstead. Today, we invited people to race horses. What else can we do? Li Hanyuan said unconcernedly. Jingwan was helpless. The person who died is your cousin. Continuing the horse race, wasn't that poking at someone's lung? So what? Don't talk about the cousin who is 2 or 3 levels apart. Even if it's a blood brother, Ben Wang will still do the same. It can't be helped if he is not pleasing to the eye. In any case, not many people find Ben Wang pleasing to the eye. All right, as long as you are happy. Horse race, continue the horse race. In any case, there was already a plan to deal with this matter. In the end, a certain person would not have anything to do, so there was no need to worry. As for Bai Gongzi, who was most likely to die in vain, because he became the only son of Scholar Bai, his value was quite big and he became an unlucky person. Jingwan laughed at herself in her heart. At the foot of the Son of Heaven, there were open struggles and covert struggles for the throne. There were also the ups and downs in each of the noble families and courtyards. Who knew how many people died in vain? Jingwan sorted out her emotions, stood up, and gave 2 orders to the people around her. Soon, everyone in the farmstead got the news that the tiger came out and a life was lost. This matter was basically known to everyone. Originally, everyone was in a state of panic. They thought that Jinxin Wang and Jinxin Wang Fei would send the guests off. They didn't think that they would be so careless and actually want to continue the horse race. Perhaps it was not careless, but cold-blooded and did not take human life seriously. However, there were also some people who felt that Jinxin Wang was secretly detaining them in the farmstead. It was just that he was really afraid, or it was for some purpose. Some people made a ruckus and wanted to leave the farmstead and return to the capital. However, the person they wanted to arm wrestle with was the living king of hell. If it was another person, perhaps they could still win. But it was the living king of hell. If they didn't officially arm wrestle, they would have to admit defeat. Therefore, they made a ruckus, and in the end, they would still be obedient. Li Hongming and the others had another thought. The current scholar Bai was not only Fu Huang's cousin, but also had been Fu Huang's study companion. They had a close relationship and deep feelings. Above him, there was also a tactful uncle who helped him ascend the throne. There was also that biological mother who had already passed away. 3 layers of friendship superimposed on top of each other. How many people could compare? They believed that even Li Honyuan would certainly understand the power of this. Thus, how could Li Honyuan not be arrogant and impatient? Was he certain that Fu Huang would not do anything to him? Or is there something that they didn't know? Jinxin Wang wanted to continue the horse race, so everyone could only go to the arena. It was clearly the same, but the base price of the bet was even higher, so it should be more exciting. However, most people couldn't raise their spirits. Perhaps it was because of the fear of the beast this tiger was dead, but who knew if other beasts would appear? Or perhaps it was because they were thinking about the matter itself and didn't have the heart to think about anything else. It was just that these things had a smaller impact on the children, and their attention was also easier to divert. Therefore, it was only the second round, but they were already dancing and cheering. Perhaps because of their influence, the atmosphere gradually became more enthusiastic. When the Bai family received the news, Bai Gongzi's biological mother directly fainted. When she finally woke up, she hurriedly informed Scholar Bai, and then rushed to Li Hongyuan's manor. Scholar Bai also arrived at about the same time, wearing his official robe. Hearing the deafening cheers and extremely enthusiastic cheers, Scholar Bai and his wife's eyes instantly turned red. Their hearts were filled with hatred, and their eyes were about to split open. Their only son was gone, but these people still acted as if nothing had happened, and played so happily. Master, master! Bai Gongzi's biological mother cried until her liver and intestines were cut to pieces, and she almost didn't want to live. Madam, rest assured, no matter who it is, I will definitely seek justice for my son. Scholar Bai gnashed his teeth, and it seemed that he would absolutely not let this matter go. When Li Honyuan got the news, he still gave face and personally went to see him. Bai Xian was usually very tactful. He was very respectful to these princes. He did not treat them differently. However, when he saw Li Honyuan, he did not have the slightest trace of his usual tactfulness. Li Honyuan was a true life and death enemy. What kind of person was Li Honyuan? Basically, he was not the kind of person to greet people with a smiling face. Naturally, he would not speak nicely to people who were angry at him. If it were not for the fact that his uncle's only son died in his manor, and he was more or less responsible for it, it would be strange that he would talk to him. If it were someone else, even if it was his responsibility, he would not expect him to do anything. When Scholar Bai saw Li Hongyuan's indifferent face, his anger and hatred in his heart jumped up, and he no longer concealed his feelings in his heart. Your Highness, aren't you afraid of retribution for acting like this? Li Honyuan looked at Scholar Bai, and his posture was casual and calm. Your son was not killed by me. Why should I be afraid of retribution? You and your father are not responsible for today's ending, right? Not only do you want benefits, but you also want fame. Because you're too good at everything, you've won Imperial Father's favor. If you want to deal with this prince, you won't be able to do it under normal circumstances. Who better than using your Bai family as a raft? As long as something happens to your Bai family, it will erode Imperial Father's good impression of you. Even if you use the Bai family to frame this prince, it will not shake this prince's foundation. Who would touch your Bai family for no reason? Don't you people pay attention to the middle ground? Since you have done things to the extreme, you should have some awareness. Scholar Bai's teeth chattered. He really wanted to eat Li Hongyuan alive. Li Hongyuan sneered. Come, take Scholar Bai to see his son. Scholar Bai, please do as you please. This prince will not accompany you. After saying that, he directly flicked his sleeves and left. Scholar Bai had lost half of his mind because of the pain of losing his son. Now he was stimulated by Li Hongyuan, and he was going crazy. His eyes were bloodshot, as if he was a malicious spirit that had sworn to take revenge. Li Hongyuan, he would not let the real culprit go, and Li Hongyuan would definitely not let him go either. To trample and abuse others so casually, what right did he have? What right did he have, seeing her son's bloody body? Scholar Bai's wife directly fainted. Scholar Bai also felt dizzy. He fiercely bit his tongue and forced it to bleed. Only then did he manage to stay awake. The coroner did not find the result of the autopsy. Master Bai's body was directly taken away, which was expected. https://11/11807/1208107. HTML. Chapter 483. When Li Hongyuan returned, the other brothers saw that his complexion didn't seem to have changed. They didn't know what was going on, but their hearts and lungs were scratching uncomfortably. Each and every one of them couldn't sit still and wanted to return to the capital to see if things would develop as they expected. However, if the living king of hell didn't say to disperse, who could so easily pat their buttocks and leave? Even if Jin Wang was currently in trouble, who could guarantee that he wouldn't be able to escape again? If by any chance he was still as lucky as before, at this time, throwing stones at someone who's down the well, wouldn't that be waiting for him to settle the accounts after autumn? As for whether it would offend Scholar Bai or not, the Bai family was reasonable and scrupulously abided by the rules. If they were offended, then they would be offended. Besides, there were so many people, what could the Bai family do? Could they just find trouble with some people? Right now, the hatred was all on Jin Wang, so they didn't have the leisure to care about them. Therefore, they only needed to restrain their thoughts and quietly watch the show. Was this the so-called people who are kind will be bullied? At the beginning, that former cabinet elder of the Bai family didn't know that something had happened to his only grandson. After the corpses were carried back, the entire residence was in turmoil and chaos. Dark clouds hung overhead. The masters were mourning. The servants were grieving, as if that Bai Gongzi alone had brought death to the entire family. Don't talk about laughter. They didn't even dare to breathe loudly. Cabinet Elder Bai also finally knew about this matter. He didn't manage to catch his breath and almost lost his life. Again, he called for the imperial physician, filled the prescription, and so on. And this matter, as if it had grown wings, spread through the streets and alleys of the capital at the fastest speed. When Lu Qingdi found out about this matter, he was in the middle of reviewing memorials. On the spot, he threw his red brush and smashed the memorials. His temples were throbbing with pain. Where is that evil creature? Tell him to get his ass into the palace immediately. He couldn't stop roaring. The people inside the palace practically rolled and crawled out of the palace. Then, when they learned that Jin Wang was still at the manor, how could they dare to be negligent? They quickly rode out of the palace on horseback, entered the manor, and entered the range of the horse farm. At that moment, they experienced the grief and indignation of the Baishur couple. However, this imperial eunuch did not dare to say a single word. Those thoughts were quickly thrown out of his mind. He did not dare to let the living king of hell come to see him and could only find him himself. In a luxurious private room, he saw the leisurely Jin Wang. That was even more leisurely than the other Wang Ye. His heart inexplicably shuddered. This servant greets the Wang Ye. Li Hongyuan didn't respond at all. The situation was a bit awkward. The others looked at each other, but they didn't say anything. Instead, they looked at Prince Kong. Their meaning couldn't be more obvious. He was the boss, so it was natural for him to speak up at this time. Prince Kong secretly cursed in his heart. A group of disgraceful things. How come he didn't see them being this modest? Who would have thought that he was the boss? Although he wasn't very smart. But at this moment, he also knew that whoever opened their mouth right now would likely be remembered by this bastard Li Hongyuan. However, he couldn't ignore it. They didn't have the same willful right as Li Hongyuan. Prince Kong suppressed his anger as much as possible and didn't vent his emotions. Dai Gong has come. I wonder what is the matter? This Dai Gong also wanted to scold people, asking when he already knew the answer. There really wasn't a good thing among the emperor's sons, but he didn't dare to show it on his face, replying to Wang Ye. The emperor summons Jin Qin Wang Yi. Okay, the name was called, so the others also didn't mix in. However, the person who should cooperate still didn't cooperate and looked at the field seriously. Interrupting and building bridges, Prince Kong also watched from the sidelines. Fu Wang's inner chamberlain wanted to report to Fu Wang, so he did what he needed to do. Naturally, the rest had nothing to do with him. The current day was a pleasant time, but that inner chamberlain Dai's forehead was faintly sweaty. If it was anyone else, these inner chamberlains would be very willing to run errands. Basically, they would be able to get a lot of rewards, except for Jin Qin Wang. Although sometimes Jin Qin Wang's rewards could be more than 10 or 100 other people's rewards added together. Jin Qin Wang's temperament was treacherous and unpredictable. No one dared to gamble on his good mood for the sake of those rewards. Therefore, this task was to be avoided if possible, and if they couldn't avoid it, they could only pray for their own good fortune. Dai Gong braced himself. Jin Qin Wang Yi, the emperor wants you to return to the capital as soon as possible and enter the palace. The living king of hell was completely entranced and didn't know anything else. Wang Ye, Jin Qin Wang Yi, what are you screaming for? Do you think Ben Wang is deaf? Li Hongyuan finally opened his mouth, and it sounded a little chilly. Dai Gong fell to his knees with a plop. Wang Ye, please forgive me, this servant. Okay, when the competition is over, Ben Wang will go see Fu Wang. You either shut up for Ben Wang or immediately scram for Ben Wang. If he went back to report now, without Jin Qin Wang, there was an 80 to 90% chance that he would be attacked by the emperor. Because of his incompetence, he would be suppressed by the other colleagues and stay behind to wait for Jin Qin Wang to return together. The emperor had gone to take care of Jin Qin Wang and probably didn't have the leisure to come and ask him. But if he stayed behind, there was no small risk. After weighing the pros and cons, he still decided to stay and obediently shrink to the side to be the background, striving to not be noticed by Jin Qin Wang. And Dai Gong's words and deeds once again stimulated the other Qin Wang's hearts. Because the people close to Lu Qingdi were obviously the lowest existence, but the other people basically had to be courteous to some extent, including them, these powerful Qin Wang princes. They were respectful, but other than that, there was nothing else. On the contrary, if you offended them, perhaps they would put medicine in their eyes in front of Fu Wang. However, Li Hongyuan once again became an exception. They feared him. In front of him, they were like his grandchildren, lowering themselves into the mud. Perhaps they themselves didn't know, but to some extent, their fear of Li Hongyuan had already surpassed that of Fu Wang. It was as if Li Hongyuan was superior to them at all times and in all aspects. They were both the emperor's sons, but with such a huge difference in treatment. No matter how hard they tried to persuade themselves, they still wouldn't be able to calm down. Because they were powerless to change anything now, they could only think about the future. However, some of them also understood that their fantasies about the future were just fantasies. In reality, they couldn't do anything and were nothing. After the second round, everyone originally thought that it would end, but unexpectedly, Li Hongyuan let them rest for half a second before starting the third round. After that, they would rest again before starting the final round. For those who did not know, the impact was not big. In their view, Jin Qin Wang was not anxious, so why should they be anxious? Whatever happened, it would not fall on their heads. Thus, what should be done was done. Knowing that Lu Qingdi's men had come in batches, They hoped that Li Hongyuan would go even further and infuriate the emperor. On the other hand, they felt like they were sitting on pins and needles. When it was finally over, Li Hongyuan was willing to let them go. Everyone hurriedly rushed back to the capital, and it was almost time to close the city gates. Li Hongyuan was still leisurely. Beside him, Lu Qingdi had already sent a third wave of people. Yu Zhongqing personally came with an imperial edict. Lu Qingdi repeatedly asked Li Hongyuan to enter the palace, and even issued an imperial edict. This was an unprecedented matter. It was enough to see that the situation had already reached an extraordinary point. At this time, Jingwan had already sat beside Li Hongyuan. Why don't Wang go back first? This concubine will tidy up and wait until the city gates open in the morning before going back. What's the hurry? When you're done tidying up, that's when we leave. The city gates will be closed and opened. It's not a big deal. Otherwise, we can wait together and go back tomorrow. Li Hongyuan said rather lazily. Jingwan pinched Li Hongyuan without a trace. Everything should stop before going too far. After all, that person was in power now. If he was completely angered, it would not be good for anyone. Wang Ye, don't talk nonsense. Let's go now. There's nothing to tidy up. This concubine will leave 2 people behind. Li Hongyuan did not say anything. So be it. Compared with the previous people who were in a hurry, Li Hongyuan's group still moved at a normal speed. No matter how anxious the people from the palace were, they did not dare to urge them. Of course, Yu Zhongqing, who had submitted to Li Hongyuan, was calm. He believed that Li Hongyuan could still get away this time. On the contrary, the Bai family, who was ready to fight against him to the end, would not have a good ending. Li Hongyuan wanted to go back to his mansion, first to rest and drink tea. However, under the threat of Jingwan, he went to the palace first with Yu Zhongqing and the others. Li Hongyuan entered Emperor Lu Qingdi's imperial study. There were 2 people kneeling inside. There is no doubt that they were the former cabinet elder of the Bai family and his son, Secretary Bai. Speaking of which, according to the predetermined future, Secretary Bai would also be one of the cabinet elders in the future. Not to mention other things, the father and son were quite impressive. As far as Li Hongyuan knew, the former cabinet elder had just woken up and was trembling to enter the palace. His only son, Secretary Bai, accompanied him. The father and son had been kneeling in front of the emperor for more than 4 hours. Li Hongyuan wanted to admire the old man, but in fact, the former cabinet elder could not bear it. At this moment, he seemed to be dying. Obviously, such a state was extremely lethal to Emperor Lu Qingdi. This was his uncle, so naturally, he was extremely distressed. He had been kneeling until now. No matter what he said before, Emperor Lu Qingdi did not agree. At this moment, he even agreed to what the father and son of the Bai family did not say. At least when Li Hongyuan came in, Emperor Lu Qingdi stood in front of his uncle and tried to help him up. Your Majesty, my poor grandson. He was not even 20 years old. He died so miserably. Tears streamed down his face. His voice was hoarse, and he was on the verge of collapse. He was so pitiful. Uncle, please get up first. I will give you justice. Your Majesty. Li Hongyuan looked at him, unmoved, as if he was watching a farce. When Emperor Lu Qingdi finally saw Li Hongyuan had been standing for a long time. Your son pays his respects to imperial father. Li Hongyuan bowed lightly. You vile spawn, do you even put me in your eyes? Why aren't you kneeling down? Li Hongyuan lifted his eyelids. His eyes were as calm as an ancient well. He lifted his robe and knelt down. Seeing him like this, Emperor Lu Qingdi was so angry that he wanted to slap him to death. However, looking at his face, he could not bear to do it. He suppressed his anger and said, What do you want to say about today's matter? Li Hongyuan sneered. What do I want to say? The height of the precious beast garden's wall is high enough and very sturdy. Not to mention 1 or 2 tigers. Even if there were 100 of them, those beasts would not be able to escape unless someone deliberately let them out. Your son has no enmity with Madame Bai, and we rarely come into contact. It is clear that your son has been in the limelight recently. Someone wants to deal with your son. Madame Bai is just a pawn chosen by the other party. They chose him and not others. It's fine that Scholar Bai did not want to find out the truth when he arrived at the manor. Instead, he first showed his attitude to your son. Elder Bai is also ridiculous. He did not care about anything and first came to you to complain tearfully. Then, he directly held onto your son and refused to let go. You want an explanation? Some things are already clear. You are delaying the investigation. So this prince wants to ask what Madame Bai means. What enmity does this prince have with him? Being attacked by Li Honyuan like this, the two people from the Bai family were so angry that they trembled. They pointed at Li Honyuan. Li Honyuan directly stood up and flicked his sleeves. If you want to put a label on this prince, it's troublesome. Take out the evidence. Even if you want to fabricate evidence, it's troublesome to put on an act and investigate the matter. Without a reason, this prince will not admit it. Bastard! Lu Qingdi shouted angrily. Li Honyuan looked straight at Lu Qingdi. Compared with his previous expressionless face, he was now cold. What I said just now was also for father. If father also thinks that it's all my fault, take out the evidence. Or, father, for the sake of your relationship, you will listen to whatever they say and give them whatever they want. I, your son, can also be sacrificed without hesitation. Then, father, you can just issue an edict to punish me. After all, you are the emperor, and I am not even a subject. Wealth and life are just a few words from you. Anyway, some things have already happened for more than 20 years, and I don't care about it. After saying this, he directly flicked his sleeves and left. Lu Qingdi was stunned. He did not understand what his son meant. Thinking of a certain possibility, he could not help but take 2 steps back. He knew. Did he really know? But how could it be? How could it be? Li Honyuan walked to the door and stopped. He turned back and looked at the 2 people of the Bai family. The whole capital city knows that if people respect me, I will return the favor. If you insist on not letting me go and don't want to find out the real culprit, I will definitely make your Bai family restless before I am stepped on. After that, he left quite decisively. The father and son of the Bai family were shocked. Lu Qingdi frowned. In fact, Lu Qingdi was very clear that no matter how much he gave his son, he still owed him. He owed him the right of succession from the beginning. And it was he who caused all this. His son had never wanted to fight for the throne. He was a little confused before, but if he knew about his special birth, wouldn't everything make sense? The more Lu Qingdi thought about it, the more he felt that it was so. However, except for himself, only consort Su knew about it. The others were all dead. If Yuan knew, there was no doubt that it was consort Su who told him. Lu Qingdi was burning with anger. That woman really had a lot of guts. The father and son of the Bai family saw that Lu Qingdi's expression was not right. They panicked. Your Majesty, Lu Qingdi looked at them. There was no more grief in his eyes, nor was there an attitude of absolute support for them. Uncle, go back and recuperate. I will work with the governor's office, the Ministry of Justice, and the Supreme Court to investigate and find out the real murderer. As the saying goes, the dead can't be brought back to life. Uncle, please restrain your grief. If you don't take care of your body like today, I will be heartbroken. These words seemed to be concerned, but the father and son of the Bai family understood that this clearly carried the meaning of warning. They used their affection to cry in front of him. It was also a kind of threat. Yes, in Lu Qingdi's eyes, it was a threat. Because he was the emperor, if he gave, you could take it. If he didn't give, you can't take the initiative to ask. The hearts of the father and son of the Bai family turned cold. Originally, the situation was good and was advantageous to their Bai family. But when Jin Xin Wang came, he only said a few words and completely overturned the situation. They were shocked by Jin Xin Wang's power and also shocked by Jin Xin Wang's position in Lu Qingdi's heart. Your Majesty is like this, but this subject doesn't deserve it. This subject only wants justice. https:///11/11807/12207674. M. Chapter 484. Your Majesty, this is too much for this subject. This subject only wants justice, that's all. Well, I know. You can go back first. This time, the father and son did not dare to act shamelessly. No matter how they tried to persuade him, it was useless. Secretary supported his father. In fact, after kneeling for such a long time, he was not much better than his father. He was trembling and could not stand up at all. After suffering so much, but not achieving the expected result, how would he feel? Lu Qingdi looked at him and asked the eunuchs to help him up and send him back to the Bai family. After they left, Lu Qingdi said, "Summon the governor of the capital city, the minister of the Supreme Court, and the minister of the Ministry of Justice to the palace immediately." Lu Qingdi said. He sat back behind the plan and continued to read the memorials. However, in his current state, he could not read them. He threw the memorials aside. He was so irritable, depressed, and angry that the eunuchs wanted to find a hole to hide in. However, an eunuch came out and asked, "Your Majesty, it's very late. Do you want to call for dinner?" Because of the father and son of the Bai family, Lu Qingdi missed the dinner time. Obviously, he was not in the mood to eat before. Lu Qingdi rubbed between his eyebrows and said, "Call for dinner." He directly moved to the side hall and said, "When the 3 ministers come, bring them here directly." The eunuchs all breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, Lu Qingdi did not vent his anger on them. Li Hongyuan walked out of the palace with a cold face. Along the way, one could feel the cold air whooshing from afar. No one dared to approach him because it was already dark. Sometimes it was hard to notice. Therefore, even if they were walking towards him, they would all stop in their tracks and turn. If they really couldn't avoid him, they would quickly retreat a little, either standing or kneeling. They didn't dare to breathe too loudly and were unusually respectful. Li Hongyuan walked straight past them, completely ignoring them. It was better to be ignored. It was definitely 1,000 times better than being noticed. Li Hongyuan went out of the palace and boarded the carriage. His exposed emotions disappeared without a trace in an instant. However, since he didn't say anything, the carriage could still stay where it was. Because the Bai father and son left not long after him. Although it was slightly slower due to the inconvenience of movement, they were still carried out in a palanquin. When they learned that the carriage of Jinxin Wang Fu was still there and had not left, the 2 people couldn't help but shiver. There was always an unpleasant feeling, always feeling that they had provoked someone who should not be provoked. When the 2 of them got off the palanquin, they happened to see Li Hongyuan's carriage with the curtains pulled open. Because there were no lights in the carriage, they couldn't see the situation inside. However, they felt that there was a pair of beast-like eyes inside, flashing in the darkness as if it was hunting, and the father and son, or the prey, was staring at. His knees were already hurting to the bone, and now his legs were weak. If he wasn't supported, he might have fallen to the ground. She had long heard of Jinxin Wang's illustrious reputation and had also seen his methods of dealing with people on certain occasions. However, in the end, she hadn't come into contact with him, nor had she personally experienced his methods. Now, there was a kind of terrifying feeling. Return to the Fu. Li Hongyuan's emotionless voice came from the carriage, and the coachman in front of the carriage immediately raised his whip. Looking at the carriage that was going further and further away, the father and son's hearts were filled with varying degrees of regret. However, after losing his only grandson, how could this person still have any rationality to speak of? When Li Hongyuan returned to Jinxin Wang Fu, Jingwan had already ordered people to prepare the meal. She didn't feel surprised that Li Hongyuan returned so quickly. In any case, this kind of thing for her was already used to it. Because she already had a plan in her heart, Jingwan wasn't worried. And Li Hongyuan's emotions were all for others to see. When facing Jingwan, he couldn't be bad and did what he should do. At the same time, the governor of the capital magistrate, the minister of the Supreme Court, and the minister of the Ministry of Justice had already arrived at the palace 3 days ago. Although they had already gone to the yamen, when the emperor summoned them, even if they were in a daze in the middle of the night, they still had to get up and enter the palace. What's more, after today's matter, they already had a plan in their hearts. Lu Qingdi let them eat together. Regardless of whether they ate or not, they all had to sit down and thank the emperor for his grace. Lu Qingdi was in a bad mood and hastily ate a bit. When he stopped, the other 3 also followed suit. Lu Qingdi wiped his mouth and threw away the handkerchief. Today's matter, you should already know. I'll give you 3 days' time. Zhen wants a satisfactory result. According to reason, the moment a person died, the capital magistrate should have taken over. However, Li Hanyuan didn't let anyone report the case. The Bai family took the body back and didn't want to report the case. Li Hanyuan investigated their own internal problems. The Bai family only wanted Lu Qingdi to uphold justice. They were too grieved and too angry. Perhaps they had forgotten. Lu Qingdi only needed to say a few words, and the following 3 people had a headache. Because they didn't take over at the first moment, there would be a lot of gaps in the middle. For example, the people related to Jin Xinhuang's manor and the people serving by Gongzi were all very important. And now, it was unknown whether these people were still alive or not. After all, if the master wanted to kill these people, it was just a matter of a few words. However, no matter how much Shi Li complained incessantly, his mouth could only agree. In fact, smart people knew that there were only 2 situations in this matter. First, it was a coincidence. The Bai family's boy was unlucky. Others were fine, but he died. Second, someone schemed against Jin Xinhuang. It was nothing more than borrowing the Bai family's hand to deal with Jin Xinhuang. If it was the former, the Bai family would definitely not let it go and bite Jin Xinhuang to death. This was not what the emperor wanted to see. If it was the latter, then who was the one who schemed against Jin Xinhuang? In fact, there was still a range. It wasn't big, but it wasn't small either. Of course, it wouldn't be easy to investigate. If those related people died, it would be even more difficult to investigate. And the final result was also not what the emperor wanted to see. And between these two, the possibility of the latter was far greater than the former. And even if it was the latter, if the investigation didn't lead to the cause, the Bai family would definitely bite Jin Xinhuang to death. More importantly, she had to satisfy the emperor. What was the most important thing to satisfy the emperor? To put it bluntly, this kind of thing shouldn't be investigated in the open. The emperor himself would determine the outcome. The capital governor and the minister of justice might have some concerns and didn't dare to go through some procedures. But the 5th Tai Ching of the Supreme Court was famous for being upright and plain-spoken when facing a case. He would investigate it as he should. Because of the special situation, Master Bai's funeral hadn't been held yet. The Bai family didn't even hang out the white banner. Naturally, no one would come to offer condolences. So, it was certain that the body hadn't been buried yet. It was just tidied up and changed into decent clothes. From the outside, it didn't look that scary. In fact, the people who went to the manor with Master Bai were indeed beaten to death by the furious Madam's secretary, Bai who couldn't find a way to vent her anger. Their relatives and friends were not allowed to collect the bodies. They were directly thrown into the mass grave and buried hastily. There is no value in itself, but the people and things related to them still had to be investigated. Fortunately, the people who belonged to Jin Xinhuang didn't die. On the contrary, the people who wanted to commit suicide didn't die. The suspicious points of Master Bai's body also had to be investigated. So, an autopsy was necessary. People couldn't rest in peace even after death. How could the Bai family allow it? They cried to the heavens and fought to the earth. The others were in a dilemma, but the minister of the Supreme Court was determined. The people of the Bai family couldn't wait to eat him alive. Their eyes were filled with poison. The 5th Tai Ching didn't flinch. As long as I'm still in this position, I have to do things according to the rules. Secretary, but it doesn't need to look at me like this. If you really don't like me, you can go to the emperor to complain. If the emperor dismisses me, I have nothing to do with it. In Jingwan's impression, the 5th Tai Ching was an amiable old man. He liked to stroke his beard. From time to time, he would break a strand. He also liked flowers and plants. Occasionally, he would be like an old child. He would snatch things from his grandfather. He would quarrel until his face turned red. Even though she knew that he had a bad temper, that even Lu Qingdi had a headache in some aspects, she had never really seen it. However, when it really showed, people couldn't help but gasp in admiration. Secretary Bai was infuriated by the 5th Grand Eunuch, but he really could not be involved in this case. After all, The fifth Grand Eunuch was investigating the case according to the normal procedure. He was in the right no matter what. If he was involved in this case, Secretary Bai would be regarded as taking advantage of his relationship with Emperor Luqingdi. At that time, not only Secretary Bai would be criticized, but even Emperor Luqingdi would be criticized by all kinds of ministers. It would be strange if Emperor Luqingdi was happy at that time. Secretary Bai clenched his back teeth. He could only be isolated and watch the coroner make trouble on his dead son. His wife cried and threw a tantrum. She had already lost her image. She cursed the fifth Tai Ching to die a horrible death and to have no descendants. The fifth Tai Ching looked coldly with a straight face. He was extraordinarily serious. Speaking of which, the fifth Tai Ching was well-mannered. If it were someone else, he might have directly retorted, "The Bai family is the one who will have no descendants. Look, even your only son is dead. Could it be that you have done too many evil things to end up like this?" It should be noted that the fifth Tai Ching had many children and grandchildren. His family was harmonious, and many of them were successful. In the end, it was the wife of Secretary Bai who fainted from crying. It had to be said that the coroner was quite capable. According to some of the characteristics of the corpse, it could almost be concluded that the deceased had taken some kind of medicine before his death, and the effect of the medicine was probably to replace the organs. According to this clue, they continued to investigate. They really found a servant of the deceased. However, the servant was dead, and the clue was completely broken. If the servant had not been beaten to death by the order of the wife of Secretary Bai, they would have suspected that the wife of Secretary Bai had something to do with the servant. She killed the servant to silence him. Knowing that her recklessness had broken an important clue, the wife of Secretary Bai fainted again. However, when she woke up, she refused to admit her mistake. She did not take good care of her son and caused his death. Didn't such a servant deserve to die? In fact, as expected at the beginning, there was no result at all. Everything pointed to the fact that someone had planned all this. However, every clue, whether it was the people of the Bai family or the people of Li Hongyuan's farm, was broken at some point and could not be investigated further. It was like a thread that was divided into several parts and then cut off together. Since there was no clue, no matter how angry Luqingdi was, the result would be the same. Even though the Bai family was rational and thought that they shouldn't completely vent their anger on Jinqin Wang, but once they thought that their precious flesh and only seedling was gone, how could they still be rational? Even if they wanted to be rational, other people were either wailing, pointing, and gossiping, or rejoicing in other people's misfortune, constantly reminding them, washing away their rationality. When this person's grief and indignation reached a certain degree, they would always involuntarily find a way to vent. The former court elder of the Bai family went to the palace every day. His body was obviously getting worse, and it looked like he would die at any time on the way, but he still did not stop. Luqingdi was having a headache. After all, this was his uncle who had helped him a lot. Besides, if he put himself in his uncle's shoes, he could not say anything harsh. However, it was absolutely impossible to put all the blame on his son. Master Bai's body could not just be left there. It had to be buried. Therefore, the Bai family finally hung up the white banner and did the ritual. Other people also came to offer their condolences one after another. Especially the in-laws of those grandaunts who had married out those grandaunts came back as soon as they knew about the matter. Until now, a few days later, they helped to take care of all kinds of things. They wanted to comfort them and let them restrain their grief. However, the sorrow of a white-haired person sending off a black-haired person was not something that could be eliminated with a simple sentence. Looking at the miserable appearance of the family, people couldn't help but sigh. The Bai family did not have a son before. From top to bottom, from inside to outside, they were often laughed at. And as the wife of Master Bai, even if she gave birth to 4 daughters, she was also called a hen that could not lay eggs. She was scolded and disliked. That kind of grievance, that kind of bitterness, it lasted until the 5th pregnancy when she gave birth to a son. In fact, she was not young anymore. In order to give birth to a son, her husband had long stopped sleeping with her. That child was also calculated by her. When it was born, it was a son. Her position was stable, and all the mistakes in the past were as if nothing had happened. That son was old Madame Bai's life. Without a son, it could be said that there was no hope left. Recently, she was going crazy. In this matter, she didn't know how, but it was related to Jingwan again. It seemed that in just one night, all the mistakes were her. Building the horse ranch was her idea. Building a luxurious animal garden was her idea. It was all because of her that Jin Wang became more and more extravagant. If it wasn't for her messy ideas, how could someone die and so on? Jingwan felt her knees hurt. It was simply lying down and getting shot. However, it was not enough to just talk about it. The old madam of the Bai family actually wanted Jingwan to wear mourning clothes for her son and kneel until her son was buried. If Jingwan didn't care about it before, her face would have turned completely cold now. Originally, the Luo family didn't intervene in this matter. However, the Bai family's actions completely angered the Luo family. Luo Peishan directly tore into Scholar Bai in the court. Of course, he didn't do anything to Scholar Bai directly. He was the Minister of Personnel Affairs and was in charge of the officials. As long as the officials were related to the Bai family, especially those sons-in-law of his, he would pull them all out and mercilessly scrutinize them from head to toe. People in the officialdom simply couldn't withstand being scrutinized to death. There was always a bit of a problem with their morality. At this moment, all of them were pulled out by Luo Peishan. There was a problem here. If they didn't pass the assessment, they were not allowed to be promoted. Luo Peishan also didn't use any underhanded tricks. This official is not like some people who like to fabricate nonsense and create something out of nothing. This official has always paid attention to the facts. Scholar Bai said that this official was talking nonsense, but this official can't agree. You must know that these matters are not handled by this official alone. There are so many people in the Ministry of Personnel Affairs, and they are all clear about it. Originally, there's no need to report to the emperor about the transfer of officials below the 4th rank. Now that I've brought it out, it's easier for everyone to understand. Although it wasn't an underhanded trick, it was more infuriating to go against the Bai family openly. The Bai family had the emperor as their backer, and they knew how to conduct themselves. There were many colleagues who were on good terms with them. However, at this moment, no one stood out. Firstly, if they angered Luo Peishan, they might become the next Bai family. Secondly, if the Bai family vacated their positions, there would be more opportunities for others. Friendship was friendship, but when it came to their own interests, friendship was nothing. Scholar Bai was so angry that he almost vomited blood. Luo Peishan's smile didn't change, but his eyes were cold. In such a situation, Lu Qingdi chose to be a bystander and didn't say a word. Of course, the Luo family wasn't the only ones who were really angered. The real evil fire in the living hell's heart was accumulated. Once it exploded, it would definitely burn people to death. However, the living hell didn't take any action for the time being. Many people related to the Bai family were in trouble, so old Madame Bai didn't dare to keep pestering Jingwan. However, that didn't mean that the Bai family would stop causing trouble. The former cabinet elder ran to the emperor and requested that the 81 altars built today be used for his grandson's ritual. Lu Qingdi immediately flew into a rage. If it weren't for the fact that this was his uncle, if it weren't for the fact that he was old and couldn't even stand steadily, Lu Qingdi would have smashed the inkstone directly on his head. Lu Qingdi still longed to see the imperial noble consort and asked her to come out to perform the ritual for his nephew. How could a kid like him deserve such honor? Uncle, go back. I'll pretend that I don't know about it. This time, the former Grand Secretary had steeled his heart. Your Majesty, the imperial noble consort is just a nameless orphan girl of unknown origins. You supported her and made her the imperial noble consort, giving her the supreme honor. But to say that she's some fairy of the 9th heaven, it's fine if you just coax the ignorant people, but do you really believe it? Think about how much the Empress Dowager did for you. How much she sacrificed and how much she sacrificed. Do you really have the heart to see her family die out? Lu Qingdi's face was livid. Of course, he remembered some things in his heart. This was the reason why he had always been kind to the Bai family. But it didn't mean that he was willing to be mentioned in public. Uncle, you've gone too far. My uncle is very good. He has many children and grandchildren. How can the Bai family die out? The Bai family had always been reasonable and sensible. But now, they suddenly exposed it, which made Lu Qingdi very angry. He suspected that they had been pretending before. Your Majesty, my poor grandson. If he can't reincarnate, his experience will only be the beginning of the Bai family. Do you really have the heart to? Enough. Lu Qingdi shouted angrily, interrupting him. Your Majesty, my grandson died unjustly. He died with his eyes wide open, and his resentment can't be dispelled. You promised to uphold justice for him, but you didn't say anything. You even gave him a religious ceremony, and he wasn't willing to be reincarnated. Your Majesty, the Bai clan is gone, and this old thing doesn't have the face to continue living in this world. Everyone in the Bai clan is ashamed to face their ancestors. It's better for them to die so that they can go down and beg for forgiveness. The former cabinet elder seemed to have lost his mind. Whatever he should say and what he shouldn't say, he screamed it out. To put it bluntly, his goal was still Li Hanyuan. He wanted Li Hanyuan, the murderer, to pay the price and resolve his grandson's grievances. He was also certain that Lu Qingdi wouldn't give up the altar. This was not only a threat of death, but also the death of everyone in the Bai family. Lu Qingdi's face was gloomy. He didn't know what happened to make his uncle act like a different person. Even if he got what he wanted, would the Bai family have a good life in the future? However, if this continued, Lu Qingdi's image in the public would be affected. When Li Hanyuan heard the news, he knew that it was about time. Is it necessary for the Bai family to do this? Jingwan was confused. The Bai family's only child is gone. This means that the previous plan is useless. It is not wise to destroy the friendship between the Bai family and my father. But what if someone made a promise to the Bai family? How long can my father stay on the throne? How long can the Bai family exist? Even if the Bai family is hated by my father, as long as the Bai family is still alive, there's a possibility for the Bai family to rise again. If the Bai family removes a big rock like me for the person who made the promise, the Bai family will be a meritorious official. Hearing this, Jingwan also understood. Is Yuan going to do it? https://11/11/11807/1235946. Chapter 485. Naturally, we have to resolve this matter before Fu Huang makes his decision. It's time to teach some people what it means to draw water with a bamboo basket. Muin, get ready to go to Bai Fu. Li Hanyuan got up, brushed his robe, and looked at Jingwan. It should be a good show. Wan, do you want to go and take a look? Weren't you curious about what this husband was going to do from the start? Just watch the scene. You don't have to listen to other people's retelling. Jingwan thought about it. Gossiping about this kind of thing, it was indeed more interesting to be the first to watch the scene. Moreover, Bai family had dragged her into the water before. If there was a chance to take revenge, it seemed that there was no need to be polite. As for why it was gossiping, Jingwan thought so anyway. Thus, okay, let's go together. Li Hongyuan's clothes were barely passable. He was wearing the usual black brocade robe with auspicious clouds. Jingwan's clothes were more excessive. Although it wasn't bright red, the color was more colorful. It was definitely not suitable for mourning. Although they were going to watch the show, but in the end, the deceased was the most important. Wouldn't it be inappropriate? Jingwan's clothes were chosen by Gong Mama, who was usually the most upright and wouldn't make mistakes easily. When Jingwan raised her doubts, Li Hanyuan also said that there was no problem. Thus, Jingwan didn't have to worry so much. However, could she suspect that there was also a problem with that by Gongzi? The so-called taking the firewood from under the cauldron was actually referring to by Gongzi himself? At this moment, she was too lazy to think about it. In any case, the mystery would be revealed soon. It could be imagined that when Jin Xinwang Fu's guards of honor majestically appeared in front of the Bai family's gate, and then saw Jingwan's clothes, the Bai family's expression would be as if they had swallowed a fly. It was as ugly as it could be. However, Li Hanyuan was still a prince, so they didn't dare to say anything. However, some people thought maliciously, go ahead and be arrogant. Let's see how long you can be arrogant. Without your respected status, even if the emperor wants to protect you, you'll be ridiculed and ridiculed. Maybe now is your last chance to show off. Li Hongyuan randomly summoned a member of the Bai family and brought them to the morning hall. With the deterrence of the living king of hell, no one dared to confront him head-on, even if they were at the end of their rope. The servant of the Bai family who was called out immediately trembled in fear. In the morning hall, the only proper master of the Bai family was old Madame Bai. The rest were her daughter and son-in-law, as well as a few of the more respectable concubines of the Bai family. Seeing Li Hongyuan and Jingwan, old Madame Bai, who was like a walking corpse, instantly turned into a ferocious ghost. Her face was abnormally ferocious. If it weren't for her daughter stopping her, she might have pounced on them to kill them. The Bai family's land is lowly and can't bear the trampling of Jinxin Wang and Wang Fei. Indeed, Li Hongyuan bluntly replied. As the saying goes, even a clay figurine has 3 points of anger. The living king of hell was so hateful. The eldest daughter of the Bai family stood up, her face solemn, but she didn't lose her etiquette. She squatted down. Wang Yi and Wang Fei's status is honorable and naturally is not something lowly people like us can reach. However, since Wang Yi and Wang Fei are here today, please give this younger brother a bit of respect and a bit of peace. Wang Yi is from the imperial family and should be the role model of the world. Wang Fei is from a scholarly family. Who wouldn't praise the Luo family for their good upbringing? Everyone understood the meaning behind her words. Perhaps they should praise her for her courage? Jingwan's gaze paused on this woman. Regardless of other aspects, the Bai family's upbringing of their children was impeccable. No matter if it was the person in front of her or the one lying in the coffin, the pampered and pampered only child didn't become a dandy. It was enough to show that they had put in a lot of effort. Unfortunately, a good hand of card was ruined. Or rather, they met the living king of hell. They didn't stand on the same side as the living king of hell, so this good hand of cards was scattered by the living king of hell. Li Hongyuan's gaze lightly swept over. If people respect Ben Wang will return them with a foot. The Bai family has repeatedly bullied Ben Wang. What? Do you expect Ben Wang to repay evil with kindness? What position do you have to dare to speak to Ben Wang like this? As a married woman, you should also consider your husband's family. The woman's face instantly paled. Her husband clearly had hope of being promoted this year. Because of the Minister of Personnel Affairs, he didn't have any hope. It looked like he was going to be sent out. If the place where he was sent out became that barren and barren land, wouldn't she be blamed to death by her husband's family? She was inwardly annoyed at herself for not being able to control herself. Her husband pulled her from behind, asking Wang Yi for forgiveness. It was this official who didn't discipline him well. Another day, this official will definitely come to apologize. He didn't want his current situation to be even worse. Even now, Wang Yi is still as elegant as before. This old man really admires you. A slightly trembling old voice sounded. Bai family's Minister Qian was supported by Scholar Bai. Behind him, there were also many distinguished guests. Hearing that Jinxin Wang had arrived, these people couldn't wait to come and watch a good show, men and women alike. However, seeing that the emperor seemed to have already compromised and only lacked an imperial edict, Jinxin Wang was still so calm and composed. Could it be that he still had some tricks up his sleeve? However, regardless of whether there were any, it was best not to provoke Jinxin Wang. Go, light a stick of incense for Wang Yi and Wang Fei. Minister Qian walked closer and said to his son. Scholar Bai naturally obeyed. He personally lit 2 sticks of incense and personally offered it. His eyes were dark and heavy. Wang Yi, please, let my grandson rest in peace for a stick of incense. As for the emperor, perhaps this old man can also say a few words of comfort. Li Hongyuan glanced at the incense in front of him and suddenly smiled. If it really is the seed of the Bai family, Ben Wang's incense is also fine. But it's just a lowly seed, is it worthy? When Li Hongyuan's words came out, it shocked everyone. Li Hongyuan, you dare to fabricate this kind of thing. This old man will not rest until you die. Even though he was old, at this time, He was also like a lion on the verge of death who wanted to fight for his life. Li Hongyuan didn't care. His eyes fell on old Madame Bai, and he smiled carelessly. Fabricate? Whether it's fabricate or not, you might as well ask this by family's mistress. In the coffin, is it Scholar Bai's seed, or is it a lowly seed that she seduced and stole in order to consolidate her status? Everyone's eyes uniformly fell on old Madame Bai. Her face was deathly pale, her eyes were filled with fear, and her whole body was trembling. It was obvious that the fear was more than the anger. Looking at this reaction, could it be that Jin Wang was right? The bad premonition in Minister Qian and Scholar Bai's heart expanded to infinity. The secret that had been kept for more than 10 years had always been well hidden. The people who knew about this matter couldn't guarantee that they would keep their mouths shut and have been dealt with cleanly. As time went by, old Madame Bai herself had forgotten this matter. Her son was the Bai family's seed, and she gradually lost her vigilance. Now that it was suddenly exposed, she was caught off guard, and she wasn't someone who had undergone strict training. Her first reaction was to reveal her true emotions, and she couldn't react for a long time. Scholar Bai, who was still holding the incense, only felt that his eyes were going black. If he had forced Jin Wang to lower his head just now, his heart would still be a little complacent. But now, he felt that he was a big joke. The incense in his hand was crushed, and his whole body was trembling. He took a big stride towards his originally dignified and virtuous wife and slapped her. "Slut! Slut! Slut!" he roared hysterically. Old Madame Bai was directly knocked to the ground by this slap. She seemed to have finally regained her senses. Lao Yi, it's not. Jin Wang is spouting venomous slander. You have to believe me. She climbed up and wanted to pull Scholar Bai's clothes. Scholar Bai was already mad with anger. He kicked the woman on the ground with all his might. Speaking of which, old Madame Bai was already a person who was almost 60 years old. How could she withstand this kind of punches and kicks? However, no one dared to step forward to stop him. The servants who served her were trembling uncontrollably. Her daughter was also completely scared silly. Elder Bai Qian tightly grasped the walking stick in his hand and clenched his teeth to support himself. Compared to his son, he was not much better. In any case, he still had a little bit of rationality left. But it was already too late to stop it. It was impossible to gloss over it by deceiving himself. His whole life's clean reputation was ruined just like this, completely ruined. Enough! Elder Bai Qian opened his mouth in a trembling voice. But it was clear that his son did not hear him at all. He trembled as he stepped forward, unable to lift his feet. He was practically rubbing the ground as he walked. He barely managed to raise his walking stick and hit over, disgraceful thing. Scholar Bai finally stopped and looked at Elder Bai Qian. Father. His anger reached the extreme, and also his grief reached the extreme. Then, tears flowed down his old face. His eyes were filled with disbelief, and he seemed to be asking why. Father. Old Madame Bai could be said to be unusually miserable now. She crawled up and wanted to grab the hem of her father-in-law's clothes. Listen to your daughter-in-law. It's really not. Really not. Elder Bai Qian directly swung his walking stick and hit her head. Fortunately, he did not use enough strength. Otherwise, just this hit alone might have taken her life. Then he pointed at the coffin. Open it, strip him, and throw him into the mass grave. Send someone to guard it. If the wild dogs haven't eaten him clean, he's not allowed to come back. Just a moment ago, he was enjoying all the glory and was about to be buried in the Bai family's ancestral grave and enjoy the Bai family's incense. In the blink of an eye, he was left with nothing. Even his bones were about to be devoured by the wild dogs. Old Madame Bai did not try to stop her. She simply tried to explain herself time and time again. However, this also confirmed that her son was not a part of the Bai family. If he was, and if she was innocent, why wouldn't she want to protect him? Speaking of which, when old Madame Bai's mother-in-law was still alive, she did not have a son. Her status in the Bai family was precarious. She was suppressed by one concubine after another until she could not even raise her head. She did not expect that in her 40s, she would give birth to a son and immediately turn the tables. She could hold her head high and even forget about the past. She raised the concubine's daughter and the other concubines well. Everyone said that she had a good life and was virtuous and virtuous. She was known as a model woman. However, the reality was that she had an affair and gave birth to a bastard. Thinking about it now, how was she virtuous and magnanimous? She was clearly guilty. Those who envied her and praised her in the past, especially those who were close to her, only felt equally embarrassed now. They were too ashamed to show their faces. They hated her to death and were also disgusted to death. When that bastard was born, he looked strong and chubby. No matter how I looked at him, he didn't look like he was born prematurely at 7 months. Now that I think about it, what prematurely? He was probably full term. When that bastard was still in the womb, and after he was born, the Bai family used all kinds of reasons to deal with many people. They even treated him as their precious son and could not tolerate the slightest bit of carelessness. I'm afraid they used the excuse of dealing with those who knew about it and sold them. I'm afraid they have already become a pile of dirt. I still thought that she was a good person. I didn't expect her to be such a person. She's dirty and rotten on the inside. Her methods of deceiving people outside are also first class. Secretary Bai was cuckolded by the person beside him, and he did not even realize it. He treated that bastard like a precious pearl in the palm of his hand for more than 10 years. He looked like such a smart person, but it turns out that he is also a stupid person. Maybe he sent something, but he got carried away by the fact that he finally got a son. Even if there were some suspicious points, he ignored them. He must have gone crazy thinking about his son. Such words were whispered by the onlookers. The Bai family wished they could find a hole to hide in. It was too shameful. Old Madame Bai wanted to explain, but at the same time, she said that they were talking nonsense. In the end, she could not take it anymore. Her eyes rolled up and she fainted. At this moment, it was indeed better for her to be unconscious than to be awake. Jingwan looked at it coldly. She did not expect that the problem really came from Master Bai. It was really a drastic measure. Since Master Bai was not the son of the Bai family, the Bai family had no reason to force the emperor to punish her husband. Even if Master Bai's father had some status, he was still an illegitimate son. His death was not a big deal. Besides, according to what someone said just now, old Madame Bai must have seduced a servant to give birth to Master Bai. That meant that Master Bai was a slave. After all, even if the king of hell threw a slave to feed a tiger, he would only be criticized for being cruel. Emperor Lu Qingdi would only scold him and punish him. There would be no real punishment. This was the cruel reality brought about by the difference in status. However, in this way, there was no meaning in investigating the real culprit behind the scenes. Even if the culprit was dealing with Jin Qinhuang, however, wasn't Jin Qinhuang fine? In fact, everyone knew in their hearts who was the culprit. It was none other than those few people. Lu Qingdi himself also pretended to be deaf and mute, not wanting to face reality. Didn't you see that the joint efforts of the capital government, the Supreme Court, and the Ministry of Justice did not find anything? Lu Qingdi also did not say anything. No result was the result that he wanted. Jingwan had no sympathy for old Madame Bai. Under the harsh and cruel background, since she did such a thing, she must be aware that she would pay a heavy price if she was exposed. But Master Bai, the Bai family was too heartless. After all, he was held in the palm of their hands for more than 10 years. He did not know anything. What was wrong with that? Moreover, he was already dead. Why was there a need to torture him like this? From this point of view, Master Bai's death was fortunate. If he was alive, who knew what he would face? However, if he was alive, this matter might not be exposed. Therefore, there were some things that were hard to say. Shut up. Elder Bai Qian finally could not help but shout. Everyone was startled at first, but soon after, they unconcernedly curled their lips. It was already like this. What prestige did they still have to show off? Forcing the emperor and being remembered by the emperor, they shouldn't think that the emperor could punish Jin Qinhuang now. As long as the living king of hell didn't fall, they had offended him like that before. In the future, who would care about the Bai family? Who would dare to help the Bai family? Wang, you must have planned all of this. Are you very proud that the Bai family has fallen to this state? How can your mind be so vicious? Since you already knew, why didn't you say it in private? If you said it, everything would be resolved. The Bai family scandal would not be known by everyone. In any case, I am your granduncle. Li Hongyuan sneered. Don't claim to be related to Ben Wang. This matter originally had nothing to do with Ben Wang. It was you who insisted on not letting go of Ben Wang and wanted to trample Ben Wang into the mud. What? You did the first time, but Ben Wang is not allowed to do the same. In your eyes, when did Ben Wang become a person who repays evil with good? On the day of the incident, Ben Wang said, if your Bai family insists on making things difficult for Ben Wang, then Ben Wang will definitely make your Bai family's chickens and dogs restless before being trampled. It's just that you didn't take Ben Wang's words seriously at all. If your attitude was better before, this matter would definitely be discussed with you in private. After all, Ben Wang has no interest in revealing other people's scandals. For so many years, Ben Wang has also kept his mouth shut. In any case, you are Ben Wang's granduncle. The same words were returned to Elder by Qian. How ironic. The dried orange peel on Elder by Qian's face twitched. He really had nothing to say. The King of Hell's conduct was known to all. Occasionally, even if you didn't provoke him, he could cause some trouble. Provoking him, he had never seen anyone who was able to get away without any trouble. Probably, from the moment his son went to his country residence, his tone was not good and his attitude was not good. Today's matter was already destined. Now it was too late to say anything. The Bai family's reputation was instantly ruined. This old man only wants to know one thing. How did Prince know about this matter? That's right. This was also what other people wanted to know. Others didn't know, but why did he know? This is purely a coincidence from more than 10 years ago. Ben Wang snuck out of the palace and happened to meet someone who escaped death. I didn't want to kill him, so I spared his life. Speaking of which, that person was also stupid. At first, he escaped death, but he didn't run far away. After going around in circles, he wanted to come back to see his son. He was so unlucky that he was discovered by his son's mother, who had already taken control of the Bai family's inner residence. He almost died again, but he was also lucky to have met Ben Wang. Can you blame him for not killing him? He said it himself, he was still young. In fact, Li Hongyuan already knew about it in his previous life. He knew about it from Master Bai. At that time, it was also a bad debt. It couldn't be explained in a few sentences. After Li Hongyuan was reborn, he naturally had to hold on to the things that could be held in his hands tightly. Thus, he calculated that it was about time. So he used his limited manpower and waited around the Bai family for a long time to protect old Madame Bai's adulterer. This kind of information could be used against him in the future. In fact, there were some things that could be done in preparation. However, in Li Hongyuan's previous life, when he died, this only son of the Bai family was still alive and well. Speaking of which, your Bai family style of doing things is really unchanging. Regarding the death of that bastard child, you didn't ask about the right or wrong. Based on your mood, you first put a hat on Ben Wang. Now, this matter concerns the innocence of the Bai family's mistress. Similarly, you didn't investigate carefully and decided to convict her based on your own judgment. However, there is no second mistake. Since Li Hongyuan had already said it, what else could he say? There was no point in investigating now. Since it had already been determined, even if he explained it to the outside world, no one would believe him. They would only think that it was for the sake of face that they even admitted to the bastard child. Moreover, previously, he didn't think that it was Jin Qinhuang's fault. He just took out on him and didn't let it go. It was for the sake of the Bai family's future. In the end, it was all for naught and the Bai family was completely lost. Now, based on his judgment, this matter couldn't be faked. If he couldn't stop it in the first place, then there was no need to do anything later. This old man wishes to ask Wang Ye for a matter. Can you hand over that adulterer to this old man? For the person who humiliated the entire Bai family, he must not let him live in this world. Compared to his previous attitude, it was definitely a difference of heaven and earth. Even now, his heart still hated Li Hongyuan. However, how could his only grandson be compared to a bastard child born from an adulterous affair between a servant and the mistress of the Bai family? For the former, you might be able to get justice for your entire family. For the latter, You might even have to thank the other party for killing the shame of the Bai family. For the former, you might even be able to threaten the emperor. For the latter, the emperor could slap you to death with a flip of his hand. You want the person, sure. What do you want to exchange with Ben Wang? What do you want to exchange? Jin Qin Wang could say that he didn't lack anything. The only thing he lacked was probably power. This thing wasn't something he could give. So how about surreptitiously submitting? But it also depended on whether the other person agreed or not. Li Hongyuan sneered. Ben Wang will take his leave. Turning around, he flicked his sleeves and directly left. Jing Wan, who hadn't said a word from the beginning, also leisurely left. Speaking of which, she really was purely watching the play. When the husband and wife left, the others also took their leave one after another. Burning incense with an adulterous child, they also felt particularly unhappy. However, now that the Bai family had become like this, they also couldn't look for trouble. None of Scholar Bai's sons-in-law stayed behind. Their wives wanted to go with them, but they were helpless. You don't need to go back. Our family can't accommodate you, this great Buddha. The letter of divorce and your dowry will be sent over later. This was the general treatment for the married daughters of the Bai family. Having that kind of mother-in-law, they lost all face. It was one thing to be worried about the daughter that she raised, but they were worried that if they kept the daughter of the Bai family, their own family would be pointed at and gossiped about. Although they had expected such a situation to happen, when it really happened, they still couldn't accept it. For a moment, they cried and wailed, begging in every possible way. If they were divorced and returned home with such a reason, how could they live? Those who scrupulously abide by their duties in the husband's family were a little better. For those who relied on the support of their family and acted like a tyrant in the husband's family, their husbands were not polite at all. They even punched and kicked. Their sisters-in-law and sisters-in-law were also angered. Before they left, they fiercely spat. However, old Madame Bai's eldest daughter stood in the same place, looking at her husband with hope. When he finally turned around and left, she stood in the same place in a daze. She wanted to cry, but had no tears. It was conceivable that the unmarried daughters of the Bai family were not much better. For those who were still young, it was still okay. After a long time, the Bai family changed the head of the family, and the impact would be small. However, for those who were about to be married, their lives were really ruined. They hugged their birth mothers and cried bitterly. For a moment, the cries of the Bai family were even more earth-shattering than when they cried for Master Bai. It was also very real. There was no situation where there was only thunder and no rain. In the carriage, Jingwan was not in a good mood. Li Hanyuan knew why. Wan, do you blame your husband for being ruthless? Why would I? They attacked you first. Now, they want to strip you of your title. In fact, they want your life. So, how can you not fight back? As a daughter of the Bai family, we are bound together for good or ill. You enjoy the glory brought by the Bai family. So naturally, you have to bear the consequences brought by the Bai family. In this society that paid attention to family and family ties, everyone was the same. No one could escape from this circle. However, this matter is still too tragic for them. After all, they didn't do anything wrong in this matter, but they have to bear the consequences. It's just a pity. Wan, have you ever thought that they might hate your husband? Since you are one with me, you will not be left out. This is a very normal thing. So this is how it is. In fact, in other people's eyes, this matter was not so bad in Jingwan's eyes. In the future, it might not be a miserable life. It all depended on what they thought and what they did. Jingwan always believed that a lot of things depended on her own attitude. Li Hanyuan held her in his arms. Don't worry. You can change it yourself in the future if you have the chance. Jingwan laughed. How easy it was to say. However, no matter how difficult it was, someone had to do it. If she really sat in that position and had the support of his power, Jingwan felt that she could not be indifferent. What are we going to do next? Jingwan asked, twirling a strand of Li Hongyuan's hair. Because of father's attitude, your husband is sad. Naturally, the next step is to heal. Jingwan silently lit a candle for Lu Qingdi. However, such a father deserved to be schemed against by his son. In fact, after Lu Qingdi learned about the Bai family, he breathed a sigh of relief. However, at the same time, he did have a headache. No one knew better than him how difficult it was to deal with his son. Originally, he had been prepared for his son to come to him. Should he avoid him or appease him? If he avoided him, others might think that he had really given up on his son. Maybe they would step on his son in some way. How could Luchini tolerate such a thing? But how could he appease him? If he failed to appease him, it might add fuel to the fire. Even he might be choked with anger. Now, not only did his son not come to him, he had also solved the root of the trouble. However, his previous attitude was already very obvious. Then, his son's anger would not be so easily dispelled, especially since Lu Chengdi suspected that he already knew of his special birth and deprived him of the most important thing. Now, because of his maternal family, he gave up on him. No matter who it was, they would not be happy. So what should he do? Thinking of this, Lu Chengdi was furious with Su Gui Fei. That woman, he might have really spoiled her too much. She even forgot how her own honor and favor came about. She dared to act recklessly. Lu Chengdi wanted to strangle that woman more than once, but he restrained himself every time and did not move. If it had already happened, then there was no way to reverse it. If it didn't happen, that woman might tell Yuan everything in a fit of anger. At that time, the gains would not make up for the losses. However, Lu Chengdi still made a note of it in his heart. Lu Chengdi sent people to give Li Honyuan a large sum of rewards. As a result, Jin Xin Wang, who used to accept everything, this time disobeyed the imperial edict. He either took the things back to the palace or threw them out on the street. When Lu Chengdi heard the chamberlain's report, he was furious but helpless. He fiercely scolded the chamberlain. A group of good-for-nothings, they couldn't even send the things out. If they weren't good-for-nothings, then what were they? The chamberlain was angry but did not dare to speak. He could only obediently listen to the scolding. Lu Chengdi was busy coaxing his son. The Bai family's matter seemed to have come to an end. The Bai family asked for an audience, but Lu Chengdi did not meet them all. This time, it would not be settled by kneeling down. Even if it was by Shu, it was only about public matters and not private matters. He directly told Bai Shu that if his energy was not enough, he was allowed to go home and recuperate for however long. As a result, the Bai family could only give up and did not dare to mention it again. It could be said that this time, the Bai family's loss was quite heavy. They had worn away their friendship with Lu Chengdi and learned the truth that they did not want to admit. The family's only child was not dead, but they did not even have a single child. For the future of the Bai family, they became enemies with Jin Xin Wang. Not to mention a broad future, they were now on the verge of collapse. It was extremely difficult to stabilize. In addition, the Bai family still adhered to the principle of not easily wronged anyone. They carefully investigated. In fact, the matter that year, old Madame Bai thought that she was very strict. In fact, it was not. After all, at that time, she did not have the power of the Bai family's inner residence. At that time, no one suspected, firstly, old Madame Bai was upright and dignified. Secondly, no one thought that old Madame Bai had such big guts. Therefore, it was hidden from them. If they really investigated, even after more than 10 years, there were still clues. Well, the truth was not different from what Jin Xin Wang said. Therefore, old Madame Bai, who was almost 60 years old, was divorced for the most despicable reason of obscenity. At this age, this kind of accusation could be said to be unheard of. Old Madame Bai's parents had passed away long ago. How could the brothers and the others accept a woman like her? If they took her back, it would simply be a disaster to the whole family. The whole family would not be able to raise their heads. Therefore, it could be said that old Madame Bai's divorce was not better than being dealt with in the Bai family. For the Bai family to do this, it was probably because the jar was broken. In any case, so many people knew about it. It would not be strange if the whole capital knew about it. There was no face left. How could they let the woman of the Bai family, who had fallen to this point, live well? As for the person who plotted this behind the scenes, he probably didn't expect such an ending. It was really like drawing water with a bamboo basket. He took the risk of being discovered and spent a lot of effort. But in the end, he didn't make a splash at all. At most, after a few ripples, he pushed the emperor closer to that side. How these people were, it did not affect Li Hanyuan at all. He did what he should do as usual. Lu Qingdi's side also did not pay attention to it. Originally, he planned to hand over the horse farm. However, after this incident, he did not care about it anymore. No matter how much money it cost, he was ready to pocket it all. According to Lu Qingdi's character, even if he had some scruples about the horse farm and the precious beast garden, he would definitely suppress all the impeachment memorials at this time. After coaxing his son, he could also find a lot of reasons to smooth things over. The winning and losing of the race had been calculated. For those who won the bet, Jingwan sent people to go door to door to send silver notes or cash. Jingwan said that she was operating legally. How could she be greedy for people's money? The people who originally thought that they had wasted money were a bit confused when they received the silver. What was that? It seemed to be exactly the same as what they had won. It also said that the next horse race would be in 7 days and there would be no more invitations. If they had the idea of participating, they should send people to the farm to register in advance. They originally thought that Jin Xinhuang was going to suffer this time. Some people's illegitimate sons had already suffered a few days of supercilious looks. Unexpectedly, there was this kind of reversal. The originally anxious hearts calmed down in an instant. The others choked half to death. And those who were still regretting that they had found something fun with great difficulty, and after one time, the real dandy who might die prematurely, when they heard the news, they were very happy. Then, one by one, they said, "That's right. Who is Jin Xinhuang? How could anything happen to him?" Even if the urgent report from the 800-li border was about to reach the capital, based on the previous matter, Li Hanyuan would still take his wife to play as usual. In any case, even if someone said that he was indulging in a life of luxury, his old man would suppress his anger and not flare up. https:///11/11/12807/123594777. Chapter 486. From his point of view, some people were simply helping him. However, as some matters approached, Li Hanyuan was more or less a bit abnormal. Others may not have noticed it, but as his pillow, Jingwan was very clear. According to Jingwan's understanding of him, a certain person was someone who treated all the major matters as minor matters, and all the minor matters were not important. Even if there were times when some people angered him, his fluctuating mood would not last for long. It came quickly and went quickly. It was the true portrayal of mood swings. This time, it lasted for an unexpectedly long time. How could Jingwan not find it strange? Jingwan asked him why. Li Hanyuan only said that it was nothing. Jingwan lightly frowned. Once or twice, he was unwilling to tell her. Jingwan felt that it was nothing, but when it happened too many times, it was inevitable that her heart would feel a bit uncomfortable. However, the matters that he kept in his heart were certainly not trivial. Thus, Jingwan felt distressed again. In the end, she could only helplessly sigh and no longer ask. Wife was sensible and considerate, but this was not what Jin Xinhuang wanted. He hoped that she could get to the bottom of it. He felt that there was a tacit understanding between the two. Why was it that on this matter, they were unable to reach an agreement? It was very worrying. In order to make his wife feel more at ease, Li Hanyuan put those matters aside. After all, the world was big, and his wife was the most important. However, even if it was like this, Li Hanyuan did not stop tormenting Fu Yunting recently. Although he had never called him in, Fu Yunting was rather uncomfortable recently. He was inexplicably promoted. Although it was still an idle position, he was dog-tired from morning to night. He did not have a share in the morning court, but he woke up earlier than any other courtier. And, at night, he could only return home when it was almost midnight. Sitting in a bathtub, he could fall asleep. The time he could spend in bed was at most 4 shurchen. His wife, Madame Wei, was heartbroken, but there was nothing she could do. With the situation in Wu Anho's residence, there were many things that Fu Yunting did not have the right to say no to. Compared to Wei Shi, Fu Yunting believed that it was the court that was looking for trouble with Wu Anho Fu. Fu Yunting was much clearer that the one who made him this miserable was actually Jin Wang. From when Jin Wang first came knocking on his door until now, there were many things that Fu Yunting could not understand. It was true that Jin Wang had helped Wu Anho Fu a lot, but in all likelihood, he had enmity with him in his previous life. Perhaps he had killed his father and seized his wife, which was why he was hated so much in this life. If he hated him, then he hated him, but he still did not give him a quick death. However, Fu Yunting found joy in the midst of misery. Being squeezed dry like this, his martial arts skills actually improved. To a certain extent, Fu Yunting was the truth. However, the truth was exactly the opposite. It was the other party who had seized his wife. Therefore, the most shameless person was still the living king of hell. In his previous life, he had stolen someone else's wife. In this life, he still bore a grudge against the other party and made him miserable. It was truly unreasonable. When would these days come to an end? Fu Yunting did not think about it. Even if he did, it was useless. He naturally did not think that it would come to an end very soon. Wu Anho Fu was born with martial arts. In the end, the sons of the Fu family would not be able to escape the fate of going to the battlefield, unless the entire family was completely wiped out. In Li Hongyuan's previous life, Jingwan sacrificed herself to protect the two seedlings of the Fu family. In this life, Li Hongyuan would protect the entire Wu Anho Fu. Not only that, Fu Yunting would not want his life. Instead, he would want Fu Yunting to work for him for the rest of his life. Just like Yizhihai, when some battles arose, they would not end so easily like in the previous life. They would either die on the battlefield or die of old age on the battlefield. Therefore, it could be said that the living king of hell was actually perverted to the point that he was not human. When the horse race was in full swing in the manor, an urgent report was delivered to Lu Qingdi's imperial desk from 800 miles away. At the northwest border, the Western Xiongnu and Northern Xiongnu armies had joined forces to invade. In just a few days, they had already conquered half of the prefecture. If they did not send reinforcements immediately, the entire prefecture would fall into enemy hands. Lu Qingdi was shocked and angry at the same time. He immediately summoned the ministers. Now, it was no longer a question of whether to fight or not, but how to fight, and also the issue of the commanding general, provisions, and so on. The war came too suddenly. There was not even a bit of information before. With this kind of unpreparedness, it was normal for Qi Yuan to fall again and again. The important ministers of the court, both civil and military, gathered at the imperial study at the first moment. After reading the urgent report, they could not help but frown. This matter was indeed very thorny. Even if there were factions that supported war and peace, at this time, the peace faction would not stand out. Think about it. They had already lost almost 2 prefectures. If they still dared to talk about peace, they were afraid that the more moderate Lu Qingdi would directly slap them to death. Unless it was the kind of ruler who only knew how to enjoy himself and did not care about anything else. Otherwise, no emperor would be indifferent to the loss of territory. At this time, the Minister of Revenue did not cry about being poor. After all, last year when Jin Wang went to Jiangnan, he had collected a considerable amount of money for the national treasury. However, provisions were not something that could be solved with money. Fortunately, last year, the entire country was still considered to have good weather. To mobilize provisions was not a difficult matter. It was just that the war had already reached its peak. It was not realistic to have provisions on hand. After confirming the commander-in-chief, immediately heading to the border to stabilize the situation was the most important thing. It was just that who should sit in the position of commander-in-chief was another problem. Qin Tianming and Shen Shuhan had both taken the initiative to volunteer, and the Minister of War was also once an illustrious military general. Now, although he was older than the other two by more than 10 years, he was duty-bound to protect the country. Lu Qingdi was very clear that these people all had their own standpoints. If something went wrong before the war outside was finished, there would be chaos inside. Therefore, no matter how urgent the war was, he could not casually decide on a candidate. Pass on Zhen's order, start the court. There was no morning court today, and now it was already past the time for the morning court. To start the court at this time, it must be a major event. Those who were still unaware were somewhat anxious. When they saw those officials who usually did not change their expressions, they could not help but feel even more uneasy. The princes who were originally conferred the title of Wang in Li Hongyuan were also notified at the first moment and rushed back on horseback, panting. Soon, the civil and military officials knew what had happened and instantly began to discuss. Regarding the commander-in-chief candidate, Zhen is hesitant. Does anyone think that there is a suitable candidate? The people below immediately began to recommend, but in the process of this recommendation, Lu Qingdi's heart basically had an idea. But it was like this that his brows furrowed tighter and tighter. A suitable candidate that was not suitable. Lu Qingdi was secretly annoyed. Sure enough, he was usually too relaxed, causing the hearts of those sons to become bigger and bigger. He was not dead yet, but his team was about to be divided up cleanly. Lu Qingdi did not express his opinion for a long time, and the people below knew that the emperor was dissatisfied, so the voices gradually died down. From the beginning to the end, the important officials who met Lu Qingdi in the imperial study basically did not say anything, especially the Grand Secretary of the Cabinet, Ruan Ruizhong, and others. When most of them shut up, Lu Qingdi finally nodded at them. Your Majesty, the heir apparent of Wuanhou, was born in a family of generals. Although he has never led an army, he has a profound family background, and I think that he is not bad. Recently, I accidentally saw him and found that he is quite methodical and has the style of his father. Your Majesty, why don't you consider the possibility of letting him lead the army? If your Majesty is not assured, you can call him to the front and test him. In addition, you can send 2 deputy generals to accompany him to assist the heir apparent of Wuanhou. What do you think, Your Majesty? Ruan Ruizhong said, so neither quickly nor slowly. A strange expression flashed across Lu Qingdi's face. He pondered for a moment and said, Beloved official, Ruan's words are reasonable. Come, summon the heir apparent of Wuanhou. The others looked at each other and understood Lu Qingdi's meaning. However, why was it that the Grand Secretary of the Cabinet was highly valued by the emperor? He was good at dealing with people and had outstanding ability. He was also good at understanding the emperor's thoughts. It was understandable that people like him could not be easily compared to others. Now, Wuanhou was paralyzed in bed. During the holidays, he was always rewarded. However, Lu Qingdi basically did not summon him. To put it nicely, he sympathized with Wuanhou. However, the entire Marquis mansion was not summoned. Let alone Fu Yunting, the heir apparent of the Marquis mansion, was not summoned by the Empress. Was this the treatment of a meritorious official? When Fu Yunting was summoned by the people from the palace, he did not understand why. Afterwards, the eunuch congratulated him with a smile and simply explained the situation. Fu Yunting was surprised. In the depths of his heart, he thought that it was indeed here. His heart inexplicably relaxed. However, although it was said that the Grand Secretary recommended him, Fu Yunting thought of Jin Qinhuan. As for the relationship between the Grand Secretary, who was only loyal to the Emperor, and Jin Qinhuan, he did not want to think about it. Even if he knew, there would be no benefit. Moreover, it had nothing to do with him. When Fu Yunting entered the palace, if it was in the past, he would still hide his incompetence and appropriately show a hedonistic appearance. Now, Fu Yunting was completely himself. At least, he had to make people feel that he was convincing enough. The battlefield changed rapidly and was very dangerous. However, for Wuanhou Mansion, this was an opportunity. Although it was more likely to be a more dangerous path ahead, because the imperial family's attitude towards Wuanhou Mansion was too strange. Even when there was only a group of old, weak, sick, and disabled people left, they still did not let them go. Without enough military merits, they would only be destroyed faster. And military merits were often exchanged with the lives of the Fu family. Right now, to be exact, it was him, Fu Yunting. This official Fu Yunting greets the Emperor. Long live the Emperor. Lu Qingdi sized up Fu Yunting with a heavy gaze. Anyone could see that there was something wrong with Lu Qingdi's emotions. It was not the joy of seeing a young talent, but rather it was an indescribable feeling. The entire imperial court fell into silence. Fu Yunting quietly knelt on one knee with his eyebrows lowered. After a long silence, Lu Qingdi said, "Good, as expected of son of the Fu family. You are indeed extraordinary. Crown Wu Anho's heir apparent as a first-ranked defender general of the state. He will be the commander-in-chief of the resistance against the Xiongnu in the northwest. Today, he will lead 30,000 troops to the northwest in hopes of stabilizing the situation at the border as soon as possible and recapturing the lost territory of Qiyuan. There are no more tests. The decision was made so hastily. As a result, even Ruan Ruizhong, who was the one who recommended, couldn't help but frown. It seemed that Jin Xinhuang was right. The emperor had more opinions about Wu Anho's residence than expected. This was not as simple as superior merits overshadowing the master. After all, the achievements of the Fu family had been in the past for a long time. Wu Anho's residence really had nothing to fear now. However, the emperor's performance was not like that. Although, in the eyes of many, the emperor was particularly responsible for Wu Anho's residence. Thank you for your kindness. This official will not disappoint the emperor. What others could see, Fu Yunting was not blinded by the situation and accepted it very calmly. Without relatives or friends, how could there be limitless favor? If it exceeded the limit, it would be overpraising. Later, Lu Qingdi appointed several young generals, but it was different from the assistants of the deputy generals mentioned before. Being young meant being hot-blooded and energetic, but it also meant being reckless and impulsive and disobedient. The situation at the border was extremely urgent. The emperor's current actions were simply child's play. However, Lu Qingdi was full of reasons. These were the pillars of Qi Yuan. He believed that they would be able to beat back the enemy. A group of people who had basically never been in contact with war. Even if they had learned a lot, it was all armchair strategy. Without the guidance of experienced generals, this was the first time they entered the battlefield. This was no longer a matter of trust. More people felt that it was inappropriate. Just as they were about to speak, Lu Qingdi directly stood up. It's decided. The matter of the provisions will be handed over to the Ministry of Revenue and the Ministry of War. Kong Qinhuang, Rui Qinhuang, and Gong Qinhuang will jointly handle it. Leave. Clearly, the atmosphere was so heavy at the beginning. Everyone knew that it was imminent, but in such a short time, the matter was over. What people felt was only carelessness. It was better to say that the beginning was strong, but the ending was weak. Even Lu Qingdi's sons frowned. They couldn't find a place to resolve their doubts. One after another, they went to the Grand Secretary of the Cabinet, hoping that he could give them a satisfactory answer. Ruan Rui was also in the clouds, so he naturally fooled everyone. In a place where no one noticed, Ruan Rui and Luo Peishan looked at each other. Their hands moved, reaching a tacit understanding. After the two ministers returned home, they went to find the people that Jin Xinhuang left in their Fu. In the current situation, if they didn't see Jin Xinhuang, their hearts would be uneasy. Originally, they just wanted Jin Xinhuang to make preparations and arrange a time to meet. But they didn't expect that just by turning around, it seemed that Jin Xinhuang had already expected that they would want to see him. Dressed in casual clothes, they didn't even disguise themselves. Just like that, they went out. On their respective carriages, they coincidentally met Yu Zhongqing, who was about to leave the city. Yu Zhongqing, under the emperor's order, conveyed the verbal order to Jin Xinhuang. The two people couldn't help but feel nervous, their palms sweating. Then, they found that the commander of the Imperial Guards was intentionally or unintentionally covering for them. Then, so easily, without attracting any attention, they went out of the city and went straight to Jin Xinhuang's manor. When they arrived at the manor, just as the two of them were hesitating whether or not they should get off the carriage, Yu Zhongqing spoke first from outside. This lowly official is about to meet Wang Yi. Does Lord Ruan and Lord Luo wish to travel with this lowly official? This had already pointed out their identities. Naturally, there was nothing to be worried about. After getting off the carriage, the three parties greeted each other with tacit understanding. As for the thoughts of, as expected, of Jin Wang in their hearts, there was no need to say it out loud. Muan personally led the way. When they walked through the secret passage, they could even clearly hear the clamor from the horse farm. It was still Li Hongyuan's private room with the other brothers, but this time there was only Li Hongyuan and Jingwan inside. That's right, Jingwan was also there. Seeing Jingwan, not to mention Ruan Rue Zhong, even Luo Peishan was surprised. It was Yu Zhongqing who accepted it the most. Jingwan also didn't know what her husband was thinking, to challenge the tolerance of a court official. She could only keep a smile, sit quietly, and assume an unfathomable posture. Sit. First, tell Ben Wang, what was Fu Wang's reaction after appointing Fu Yunting as the commander-in-chief? Jin Wang's actions had always been difficult to figure out. He had already asked, so naturally, he couldn't be hemming and hawing. The three people respectively gave Jin Wang an answer from their own point of view. And because Yu Zhongqing was the closest to Lu Chengdi, and at the same time, he also saw some things after the tide receded, so he spoke more clearly. Everything, when put together, could be summed up in 3 words. Something was wrong. Li Hongyuan was silent for a moment. So, perhaps only the successive emperors of Qi Yuan knew the reason for the imperial family's strange attitude towards Wu Anho's residence. Then, to be more precise, it should be the Qi Yuan emperor's strange attitude towards Wu Anho's residence. If there was no reason for this, even ghosts wouldn't believe it. Who was appointed as the deputy general? The emperor didn't appoint a deputy general, but a few young generals. https:///11/11807/1235948 that you're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.